Hello, my friends. Happy Wednesday. We've got some headlines to get to today, but before we jump in, we're going to look at the docket we're watching right now. Michael Sussmann. We see here that there was a hearing scheduled on April 27th at 2 p.m. That happens to be today. Michael Sussmann, of course, Hillary Clinton's former campaign lawyer, the guy who went to the FBI and sort of conveniently said, I've got this gigantic dossier that's going to implicate our political opponent. Would you take a look and run with this? Turns out he was lying. He knew he was there on behalf of Hillary Clinton. He neglected to be honest about that, and he would disagree with that assessment. Of course, that's essentially what they're arguing about, the materiality of the lie. But they've got a big hearing that was scheduled today, 4/27, 2 p.m. So there'll be a forthcoming video about that, unpacking all of that. But I would follow along on Twitter if you're interested in that. Just search for somebody who's doing reporting on Sussmann, because it is a federal case. It's not going to be broadcast anywhere. We'll unpack what happened after the fact, but I want to show you what else is going on so that we're a little bit more prepared. You can see a big slew of motions has been filed. We've got all sorts of replies, orders. The judge is going to be scheduling another hearing on May 4th, 2022 on the government's motion to compel. So this is Durham's motion to compel the defense to do certain things. And so there were minute entries filed all over the place. We're going to take a look at an article over from Techno, who is going to break down one of these for us next. But I just want to show you all this activity. Even as of yesterday, we've got memorandums in opposition. Fusion GPS filed a motion. They do not want to be forced to turn documents over to the court or over to the prosecution because they know it's probably going to be bad for them. So we've got a lot of minute entries, a lot of stuff happening, but they're going to argue over some of these motions in limine today. We're going to have another one on the government's motion to compel, and it's going to just be a doozy because we've got trial coming up in mid-May. So we'll be following that along. Meanwhile, and I've got other videos queued up on this, but I don't want to miss this story. This came over from Techno, who does great reporting on all of this. So I would really encourage you to go over to the Substack and follow along. But he is reporting that Durham and the prosecution filed a motion saying that they've got hundreds of emails between Fusion GPS and reporters, people in the media. Isn't that fun? Durham filed a motion in response to efforts by Hillary and Fusion to keep all this stuff out. Durham states in the motion, quote, purported privilege holders who have intervened to do so in a case in which the defendant has denied representing any client when he brought those allegations to the FBI, saying the privilege controversy therefore entraps Sussmann to a certain extent, precluding his denial that he was working on behalf of a client. Saying the purported privilege holders who have intervened do so in a case where he's denying representing any client. He's denying representing clients, but his clients are intervening. Well, that's pretty interesting here. If he's not representing anybody, then why are other businesses like Fusion GPS, Perkins Coie, Hillary Clinton all intervening? Good question. He says Durham here is casting doubt on the declaration of Mark Elias. And we went through the full declaration from Mark Elias, and there were gigantic pages all redacted. If you remember, it looked a lot like this, but this is not from those redacted documents. These screenshots came as a result of Durham's filing. Says he's got possession of hundreds of emails in which Fusion GPS employees shared raw, unverified, uncorroborated information, including their own draft research with reporters, saying he filed these under seal with the court. Emails from Slate, emails from the Wall Street Journal. We've got the Washington Post, Tom Hamburger talking about all this stuff. So this is a juicy article that I would encourage you to go read over at Substack, technofog.substack.com, because he breaks down the whole thing. And this is just, there's so much activity going on in this case, as you can see here. But this ended up in one of Durham's oppositions. The full motion is this one here, filed April 25th, item 97, reply to the opposition by the motion. As to Michael Sussmann, motion to leave for file. So it's a big one. And if you want to read it, you can go over to Technofog's Substack and read the entire filing here. He's got a whole link to it. So amazing work from Technofog. Over on Twitter, Mike Cernovich and Elon Musk also talking about Sussmann and Baker and Durham and the liars at the FBI. Cernovich posted this morning, says, Twitter lawyer Jim Baker, you remember Jim Baker? Jim Baker was the guy that Michael Sussmann met with. He was general counsel for the FBI. He's the guy that provided notes over to Trish and Bill, who were actual FBI members there, and gave them the notes. They wrote their notes down, and we looked at those, and those notes included statements from Sussmann saying, not here on behalf of anybody else. They both confirmed that, even though Sussmann went back to his law firm, Perkins Coie, and billed Hillary Clinton for it. So I met with the FBI, bill Hillary Clinton, time spent however many hours. And at my billable rate, here's what it cost me, Hillary. So total lie. But now Cernovich, it pinged this. And what's so special about this ping is guess who responded? Elon Musk did. Says it sounds pretty bad. Why? It's because Jim Baker, that FBI or general counsel for the FBI at the time, is not there anymore. He's working over at Twitter. He's now at Twitter. Twitter lawyer, when he was general counsel of the FBI, Cernovich writes, he personally arranged a meeting between the FBI and Michael Sussmann. And we know this. We got the text messages. Sussmann was texting with him saying, hey, got some pretty important stuff. And Jim Baker's like, could this be about Trump? Because I hate that guy. And if we could have something that might be problematic for his campaign, I'm all game. He says, in this meeting, Sussmann presented fabricated evidence in the Alpha Bank matter. Those were the dossiers that we've talked about, the 3, quote, white papers that he brought not only to the FBI, but also to the CIA. Elon Musk, he's tagging. He says, this is who is inside Twitter. He facilitated fraud. And Jim Baker, of course, his screenshot of his profile is here. Not the former Secretary of State, now Deputy General Counsel. He was over at the FBI. He's the guy who met with Sussmann. Here, as another link from an article, says prosecutors say Sussmann misled the FBI general counsel, saying he was not presenting the Alpha Bank allegations on behalf of any client. In fact, he was sending Hillary bills for it. So Cernovich has a big following on Twitter. And so he dropped that one out, just almost 1 million follows. And so Elon caught wind of that. Says, sounds pretty bad. Yeah, it was pretty bad. I mean, what they were doing was political shenanigans. I mean, in my opinion, it was, criminality. It's such that they're being prosecuted for it. And it's something that is very bad. And if that guy just sort of left the FBI and was busy there concocting hoaxes with the DNC, Democrats, Hillary Clinton, Sussmann, Perkins Coie, all those Democrats, well, then what's he doing at Twitter? Do you think he's just suddenly giving up that lifestyle? I've renounced hoaxing. I'm not going to be involved in any of this activity. And I'm going to live a new nice life that's nice and censorship free and totally fair to all my political opponents. I doubt that. And so he's now over at Twitter for the last several years. Who knows how long it's been. He has been, there, probably just being a nice, fair guy over at Twitter. Well, Sussmann's being prosecuted, and we're going to see how far those tentacles go. But Elon, of course, is acknowledging, sounds pretty bad. So what does that mean? Is he going to do anything about this? Is he going to take a look at their attorney, and maybe Jim Baker is going to have to go find a new job, maybe back over at the FBI? Maybe the CIA will take him, who knows? But Elon is catching wind of this. And Twitter has been engaged in this stuff for a long time. They dumped the Hunter Biden laptop story. They banned New York Post from being on the platform because that Hunter Biden story, right in the middle of an election season, was going to be very, very problematic for Joe Biden. So Twitter, for a long time, has been putting their thumb on the scale, and they know it. Fox News reporting that Durham is going to be calling FBI General Counsel James Baker, the guy who's now over at Twitter, to testify against Michael Sussmann, or at least in the case against Michael Sussmann. The indictment says Sussmann lied to Baker when he presented the data that leaks Trump to Alpha, the Russian banks. Special counsel plans to call him to testify. He was recently indicted, Durham was. During a virtual status hearing on Tuesday, government prosecutors on Durham's team signaled their intention to call Baker to testify as part of the Sussmann case. Sussmann has pled not guilty to one count of making a false statement. The indictment alleges that he told FBI General Counsel at the time, James Baker, back in September 2016, that he was not doing work, quote, for any client. Then requested a meeting, presented the data that tried to implicate Trump. Turns out he was working for Clinton. Everybody knew it. He knew it, and he was lying to the FBI. So Baker may get a subpoena to come in and testify. He's got trial coming up in May. We'll, of course, continue to follow. Meanwhile, this stuff on Twitter is causing people to melt down. They're used to having their little dictatorial utopia arena of control, and that's evaporating quickly. We saw this over on April 25th from Abigail Moran. It came over from Benny Johnson. But this was on MSNBC, and this caught my eye. This guy, don't even know who it is, but he, Ari maybe, somebody who is very upset about what happened with Twitter. I mean, Elon took this whole place over, and this is what he is saying he's fearful of. Let's listen.
You own all of Twitter or Facebook or what have you. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't even have to be transparent. You could secretly ban one party's candidate or all of its candidates.
I know you can
all of its nominees, or you could just secretly turn down the reach of their stuff and turn up the reach of something else, and the rest of us might not even find out about it till after the election.
That's true.
Elon Musk says this is all to help people because he is just a free speech, philosophically clear, open-minded helper. You own all.
I mean, it's hard to imagine that this is a real thing. Like, is this guy living in reality? Twitter already did this. They threw the New York Post story off, as we talked about. They have put the thumb on conservatives for many years now. This has been debated for a long time. And they threw Donald Trump off the platform. They threw a political opponent, a sitting president, off the platform. They've banned entire organizations of people, calling it hate speech and saying that you're not allowed to promote certain stories that don't serve their political ends. But he's going to say that now this whole situation is in danger. Now we're concerned because one billionaire named Elon has it, but we're not concerned about Bezos running the Washington Post. We're not concerned about Zuckerberg and the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative and where they funded hundreds of millions of dollars to promote election integrity or whatever that was all about. What about those billionaires? Not a concern. Here he's just concerned about Elon.
All of Twitter or Facebook or what have you.
Yeah,
you don't have to explain yourself. You don't even have to be transparent. You could secretly ban one party's candidate or all of its candidates, all of its nominees, or you could just secretly turn down the reach of their stuff and turn up the reach of something else. And
let's talk about that. Turning down the reach, turning up the reach, because there's been some interesting activity on Twitter over the last 24 hours or so. People are noticing big changes in follower counts. John Sexton over at Hot Air put together this very nice roundup, says, what is going on with Twitter follower counts? Progressives losing followers while conservatives are gaining them. What's happening here? So go over to Hot Air and follow him, of course. But he went through Twitter and sort of assembled a lot of reaction. Says, Neera Tandon is somebody says, I just lost 2,000 followers. Anyone else losing followers? We see here Anna Navarro Cardena says, wow, anyone else losing followers today? People quitting this platform for real. And some people are asking, is that really what's happening? Or are these bots being vaporized? Don't know. Norman Orstein, another blue check mark, 3,000 down. Shannon Watts, another blue check mark, 3,000 down. Amy Siskin, which has a blue check mark and a rainbow flag there. So let's see, she's lost 4,000 followers, gained nearly 1,000 on Facebook. If you're unsure, it's an alternative. So her speculation is that people are abandoning Twitter and going over to Facebook. Says, you know, I managed a huge community over there. There is a safe space for discussion. John Cooper, looks like he's got the Ukraine background there, says, I lost more than 1,500 followers today after the news broke about Elon buying Twitter. The question is whether they are real or mostly bots. Who else lost a lot of followers today, and what do you think, real or bots? John Cooper, let's see, he's the former national finance chair, that Long Island campaign chair for Barack Obama. Almost 1 million followers. Yeah, so he's going down a little bit. Wondering if they're real or bots. Don't know. Olivia Juliana, another 1,000 followers down. Here, Dean Obadiah says, Musk buys Twitter. I just lost over 300 followers. Are people really leaving, or are they getting rid of bots? David Hogg, we all know who he is, failed pillow business owner, says, is anyone else losing followers too? I'm seeing people across Twitter report that they've lost thousands today. I am down 5,000, though much of that could be because I'm an idiot with way too many followers. I don't know. Could be true. Yeah, it's not a bad theory. Mark Hamill sometimes tweets about politics. Notice this as well. So now people are asking themselves, well, what's happening here? Is this like a resorting? Are people leaving Twitter, going over to Facebook? Just, I'm done. I'm out of here. You know, and we've seen that happen many times before. Typically, it's conservatives who get irritated and then leave and literally start their own platforms. But here, it's sort of going in reverse, and people are trying to ask themselves, is this a clearing of bots? Is this an exodus? Is this something that's only limited to the political sphere? What did Twitter have their thumbs on? In other words, Mark Hamill's mostly an actor, I guess, kind of more, I think, a political activist these days, other than Luke Skywalker. I'm not real sure what else he's done. I think he did the voice of Batman or something. But weird, I just lost more than 8,000 followers. Was it something I said? Brooklyn Dad says, no, I don't think so. A bunch of us lost followers. I think Twitter is doing a purge or something. Keith Olbermann says, I'm down about the same proportionally, 1,800 down. Can't tell if it's dead bots or people afraid that Elon will find out that they were following me. So all the progressives now, when you sort of take a look at who this is impacting, we see people are actually gaining followers. I've gotten more followers this week than I regularly get up every month, right? And I'm not super active on Twitter, but maybe that's going to change. Says, I thought it was odd over the last 24 hours, John Sexton actually gained followers. Wasn't a lot, but more than I picked up in months. Same experience with me. And when I mentioned this on Twitter, others said they saw the same thing. So John posts on Twitter, and give him a follow, at Verum Serum, says, seen some people on the left complain about suddenly losing followers. Some say it's bots. Others say they're leaving Twitter. Meanwhile, I've gained more followers. Maybe it's a coincidence. Ed Morrissey, also at Hot Air, the purveyor of Hot Air, says, I wouldn't call mine a massive bump, but my followers have gone up another 150 or so in the same time. Largest increase by far in a long time. Tom Fitton says same happens to him. Tom Fitton, of course, is the chairman of Judicial Watch. 20 times normal. And of course, why might that be? It's because Melber's dials have been dialed back, perhaps. And it could maybe be more than that. It could be that people are reinterested in Twitter. They're reactivating their accounts. They're signing up. They're sort of, annoyed with wherever they were living, and they want to join in on the party, man. It's Elon's party for now. Brian Stelter doesn't like parties like this that have free speech and, limitations on rules and people who don't ask for your vax status. But Brian Stelter's not invited. John Gabriel jumped 500 in the past day. We've got Christopher Boozy did a very interesting analysis on Twitter. So let's go over here to this thread. And he actually did some screenshots from some data. And for those of you not interested in Twitter, I understand, but this is kind of fun what's happening. It's a little bit of schadenfreude. So Barack Obama lost 5,000 followers, and that's a very interesting trend adjustment. You can see that previously, in all the days before the sale, Sunday plus 17,000, another 17,000, another 16,000. And so, are those real followers? I don't know. But suddenly the dials get adjusted a little bit and he loses 5,000. Very curious. Here we have another one, Hillary Clinton, same pattern. What's happening? We've got plus 2,000, plus 2,000. So she must have been paying less bots, plus 3,000, plus 2,000, and then minus 17,000 all on one day. Big difference. Here is Speaker Pelosi, same pattern, about 600, 700 for her on the daily. Then she drops down 13,000 in one day. Boom, Speaker Pelosi, sorry. Here's another one for AOC. Whoa, 2 back-to-back days of minus 16,000 and minus 11,000, which is a big trend reversal from plus about 1,000 per day leading up to that. So a couple big downsides there. We take a look at some of the Republican individuals. They're gaining significantly. Why is this? Here is Leader McConnell, normally kind of down 20, down 6, plus 39, plus 64, massively different numbers than what we saw from the Democrats. But then April 26, plus 2,500 new followers. Lindsey Graham got 10,000. Now, he's very active on Twitter and a little, he's very Lindsey Graham. Let's just leave it at that. He was getting about 300, 400 a day. Then on April 26, 10,000. Here's Matt Gaetz, 21,000. Was on a daily average of about 1,800. Boom, 21,000. Here's another one for DeSantis, 96,000. Whoa, in one day. Now, he was gaining, right, sort of a different type of pattern than what we saw with some of the other Republicans. But here, 5,000, 6,000 a day, up to 96,000. So very curious. Here, wondering, is this just Republicans? Lauren Boebert got 43,000 additional that day, but she was going up about 2,000 a day preceding. Here, Ted Cruz, 50,000 followers. We've got 51,000 followers for Jim Jordan. And GOP leader, the account gets 16,000 followers. Big news. Twitter spokesperson, we've got Senator Sanders, lost 20,000. We have Elizabeth Warren, lost 17,000. Schumer lost 8,000. and Stacey Abrams lost 13,000. And it just goes on and on. You can take a look at Fox News, MSNBC hosts. Maddow lost 18,000. Joy Reid lost 9,000. Tucker Carlson, 62,000 plus in the green. Here's Sean Hannity, 45,000 in the green. So, and it's not just U.S. politics either. Brazil politician Bolsonaro got another 42,000. So it seems like maybe somebody over at Twitter is just identifying certain individuals that they don't like a little bit, kind of turn those knobs, as that host was talking about, in order to game the system. But maybe things will balance out a little bit, or this could just be just a rush. People excited. Hey, who are all the conservatives I want to follow? And they go and they just follow all of them. But is this big news in Brazil? Are they also doing the same thing down there? Like, why did Bolsonaro just suddenly get another 42,000 or 100,000 followers? Bolsonaro got 42,000 followers right here. Why did that pattern change? Is Brazil also interested in U.S. politics? Are they having the same conversation that we're having about Twitter down there? I'm not sure. Or maybe it was just thumbs on the scales over at Twitter. Jumping over to Drudge Report, we can see his headline today is Russia cuts off the gas. This is an AP story causing some serious panic over there in Europe. See here that they're telling us that Russia cuts natural gas to 2 NATO nations in escalation. And the backstory on this, which we've talked about a little bit on this channel, is that they were demanding, the Russians, that you pay in rubles. If they're going to be excommunicated from the rest of the world, then you got to use their currency if you want to buy their gas. Russia cut off natural gas because they didn't pay in the rubles. European leaders calling this blackmail, which of course, yeah, I mean, that's yes, sort of, right? It's sort of a reverse sanction, I guess. If you're sanctioning Russia, they're going to reverse sanction you. You can call it blackmail. They're probably calling what you're doing to them blackmail, but I get it. A day after the U.S. and other Western allies vowed to speed more and heavier weapons to Ukraine, Kremlin used its 2 most essential exports as leverage. Gas prices in Europe shot up on the news. Tactic could eventually force targeted nations to ration gas and deal another blow to economies suffering from rising prices. Poland been a major gateway for weapons into Ukraine. It says it's hosted Western fighter jets as a NATO outpost for Bulgaria. The gas cuts do not immediately put the 2 countries in dire trouble. Poland has been working for several years to line up other sources of energy, and the continent is heading into the summer, making gas less essential. But the cutoff has other countries concerned, sent shivers of worry through the 27-nation European Union. Western leaders and analysts portrayed the move by Russia as a bid to divide Western allies, saying it comes as no surprise they're trying to blackmail us. So Russian gas giant, through state-controlled media, said shutting off 2 countries because they're not paying in rubles. Let's jump over to locals. We've got Grouchy Old Cat Lady here says, remember back last year when domestic terrorist divisions were created under the National Strategy for Countering Domestic Terrorism documents? Democrats don't think it's enough. There's a new bill, H.R. 350, Domestic Terrorist Act for 2022. Passed in the House. Everyone was focused on Ukraine. I've not heard about this. This is insane, of course. We've talked a lot about this. Remember, we went through the entire press conference, or the Senate hearing, I think it was, with FBI and DHS representatives, and they were talking about all of the new policies. They were unveiling them. The DOJ came out and announced it, and they sent their 2 sort of mid-tier representatives to talk about it. We have a bill introduced January 19th to strengthen law enforcement efforts to prevent, report on, and respond to and investigate acts of domestic terrorism. Wow, that's great. Yeah, I mean, the FBI is pretty good at creating those situations, certainly. They need more tools to, I guess, identify, monitor, and thwart. I mean, well, they've sort of been involved in creating some of these, as we learned with the Whitmer plot. So the devil's in the details. Yeah, terrible stuff, but they're going to continue to encroach upon everybody through this excuse: domestic terrorism, homegrown violent extremism. All of those buzzwords that they've created are going to be very useful if they want more money, more power, if they want to create different Capitol Hill Police Department offices in various states so that we can have a national police force. You gotta fund that stuff, and that's where they're going. Thanks for sharing that. Grouchy Old Cat Lady. Vientikiss sharing another must-watch. What's this one?
We have with us a very
80s interview, independent talk show. Post here from Vientikiss is here saying, I don't know if I posted yesterday, but Steve Donziger was freed. Steve Donziger posted this as, thanks again to Aaron Brockovich for this clear summary of Chevron's long history of abuse to evade paying for the disaster in Ecuador. And so follow Steve Donziger if you want to go check out that article over from The Guardian. We have another one from Vientikis with a meme here. We have several people with masks on, and it looks like Joe Biden says, spent $54 trillion of your money. And we have the NPCs who are non-reactive. Well, that's okay. $54 trillion. It's probably for good things like global warming and for equitable treatment of indigenous whatever. So you go, okay, that's great. Don't care. No reaction. Elon Musk has created several companies that have actually provided value to the world. He's not just a government entity that just sort of takes money and redistributes it to their political cronies. So obviously that's not okay. Says he spent $44 billion of his own money creating value in the world. And of course, we have NPCs who are in outrage mode all over Twitter. Well, why didn't you solve all the world's problems? And they don't ask themselves, you know, we've spent, I think, more than $44 billion on things like world hunger or global warming or whatever. And has it made a dent in any of it? Has any of the money that we've spent solved any problems at all? Like really, most of it. Border is still a problem. We still have international entanglements, foreign wars, all of these things. Global warming is a problem. It's been a problem my whole life. Climate change now. So the government doesn't really solve most problems. Elon, though, has created a whole new industry of electronic cars that are now going to presumably, I guess, help save the planet or something. But what has the government done? I'm not sure. So I'd rather give that $54 trillion to guys like Elon rather than guys like Biden or any other politician for that matter. Grouchy old cat lady says, a statute of limitations on testing DNA to clear someone, that seems a little wrong in my book. Yeah, that sounds not good to me. It's like Supreme Court agrees to review a death row inmate's bid for DNA testing. Prosecutors say that Reed committed a crime. It has long been maintained that her fiance, former police chief, was the real killer, former police officer. Issue is whether Reed waited too long to ask for DNA testing. And so I think this article, the summary, is implying that you only get a certain amount of time to confirm your DNA exonerates you. After that, your DNA might expire or something like that, and we can't run a test anymore. So challenge it or don't. You lose the right to challenge it. That doesn't sound right at all. I agree. It sounds a little wrong. I'd say it sounds a lot wrong. The evidence should, if the evidence exonerates you at any time, anytime, anywhere, it should be admissible, in my opinion. If you're sitting in custody and a new person reveals the smoking gun that exonerates you, and a judge is like, I know, but the case is closed. So sorry. You go, well, okay, I guess that's justice in America. Durham's latest from Mr. MVP talking about Fusion GPS. And we actually read through that very article over from Substack and Technofog. Grouchy old cat lady sharing this one from Wall Street Journal. Headline says, Supreme Court weighs the president's power to change immigration policy, saying, just say I'm crazy, let me in. Must be a mental illness conversation. Talking about them being able to use exceptions, I would guess, to allow certain people in. And when you create gigantic exceptions that apply to anybody, everybody's going to use them. And I think that's the point that Grouchy old cat lady is making. Thanks for sharing that. Another meme from Vientikis here. Looks like it is a scene from Office Space. It is Elon having a conversation with just a screaming sky lefty saying, so what would you say you do here exactly? I told you, I monitor toxicity, as screaming from the sky. Heather, 3 girly, says, Florida sheriff urges homeowners to shoot invaders to save taxpayers money. I don't know if it would save anybody money. I mean, a death investigation, is a lot of work for the government rather than, yeah, but it's a funny comment anyways. Really encouraging that Second Amendment right to be utilized. 3 girlies is here, says Trump appointed U.S. District Attorney in Delaware. That's how Garland hopes to keep the interference out of the Hunter Biden scandal. We're going to do a deep dive on Hunter Biden, so I don't want to spend too much on this, but this I think is a very, very interesting and astute observation, 3 girlies, and it's a great point. It's a great article talking about Merrick Garland refusing to appoint special counsel to deal with this Hunter Biden thing, right? So remember when Trump was in office, Durham got appointed as special counsel to go and investigate the Russian collusion hoax because people were speculating there might be a conflict of interest here. Donald Trump is the executive. He runs the executive branch. And if he's going to be using the Justice Department to go out there and, investigate his political enemies, people would be screaming from the rooftops about that. That's really problematic. You have a conflict of interest. Here, though, the Justice Department run by Merrick Garland, who is beholden supposedly to Joe Biden, is okay without a special counsel, somebody who works for the Justice Department, a Delaware U.S. attorney, who I'm sure is a very reasonable person, but is still sort of in the chain of command. What would ordinarily happen would be appoint special counsel so that that person is independent of the Justice Department. They're not within the same chain of custody. The same chain of, the org chart is different, and they don't have to be beholden to a boss who might put leverage on them to adjust the investigation a certain way or another. So yeah, Merrick Garland, he testifies during a Senate Appropriations Committee hearing saying there will not be interference of any political or improper kind. I'm not going to interfere with this, and so that's why we don't need special counsel. Mr. MVP over on Locals talking about John Durham sending off trial subpoenas. We'll get an update on that. We have here, Speech Unleashed says, what's everyone's take on the most recent conspiracy theory about increasing fires at food processing plants lately? Some are making a list of all of them as proof. However, sites like Snopes are saying they are misleading. Well, Snopes is misleading. So I honestly haven't had the time to research all these fires to see what's going on here. I have no idea about what the average fires at these types of plants have been in the last year. Just wondering what peeps here may think about it. Well, it's a good question. So let me take a look at this article real quick. And I don't really know much background on this, but fires in general, I think, are kind of abnormal. Buildings aren't burning down all the time, all over the place. I mean, just drive around, right? How many times do you see like catastrophic fires burning down? So it would be, I think, concerning if there was any aberration that was trending up, because you'd have to see, well, the numbers are, abnormal. But I don't know what the baseline would be or how you would even find a baseline. But I'm looking at this, and there are a lot of fires here. December, November, is this a common thing? I don't know. It's a very good question. I don't have a good answer to that, Speech, but it is a good question. Maybe people can sound off in the comments and let us know what you think. Couple quick comments over from YouTube members. Thank you for your support here as well. We've got MJ says, hey, Rob, thanks for all the hard work. Always a pleasure watching your show. Thanks for being here, MJ. I appreciate you. Bonnie Speck commenting on yesterday's headlines saying Texas National Guard who died trying to save 2 immigrants later identified as drug smugglers. That was on the headlines on Elon takes over Twitter. Bonnie also asks, why don't we just ask Jeff B. how many Amazon basic products are made in China? And that's on the story Bezos was throwing shade over on Elon. Now that Elon owns Twitter, Jeff was saying that, well, does that give China any leverage over the town square? Because Elon gets his batteries in China. China is Tesla's second biggest market out there in the world. And that now maybe China will have a say in what Elon does with Twitter. And so many people obviously recognizing that Jeff is just a little jelly over the whole situation because his rockets don't work as well as Elon's. But Bonnie asking, hey, those Amazon basic products that are all just sort of, mass-produced goods from China that Amazon slaps a label on, how many of those come from China? Melina is asking, ask him instead how many aren't. So who's really beholden to China if his entire production development team is based in China producing all the crap he sells? Well, then that's not going to be much different, according to his own argument. Bonnie Speck says that's true. Amazon Basics best-selling items are batteries too. Oh, on top of it. Bonnie saying on the Elon story, Elon Musk follows the road less traveled, and that's a book by M. Scott Peck, right? Marches to a different drummer. I like him more and more. And that, my friends, is it for the headlines, for the stories, for the comments on the day. I want to thank you for taking a little time out of your morning, out of your day, your afternoon to run through some of the news with us. If you enjoyed the content, I'd really appreciate a like before you got out of here. If you know somebody who might enjoy some of this stuff, some of this content, or is interested in following along in Sussmann or Bannon or Trump versus Clinton or any of these very spicy cases coming up, I'd love it also if you invited them over to the channel. Helps us, get more eyeballs and help more people sort of get plugged in with the things that we're talking about here. Very important issues. And I'd very much appreciate it. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, there's a big red button. If you smash it, it will not be red anymore. That means you're a subscriber here. And I'd love it if you hit that button because I look forward to seeing you on the next one.